Hi guys, how are you?
Oh, good. How are
Hello.
you?
Doing great. To start, David, I have to ask, I'm part of the Dead Dad Club, and my dad from the time I was born in the 90s said the Pittsburgh Pirates were gonna win the World Series. It still has not happened in the years since his death. But I do think it is a weirdly universal thing with dads that they talk about baseball teams and their success, whether or not they're good at the time that they're talking about it. When you're writing something and directing it and playing this part of that guy that really believes that his team is going to win, what was the challenge of kind of wearing all of those hats but still making that as truthful and real as it ended up being in this movie?
I think it's just always keeping in mind, what the story is about, that it's not about a specific baseball team or even baseball, but it's about connection, and it's about two people trying to find a language, three people trying to find a language in which they can communicate. And one of the things we haven't been talking about in any of these talks today is, and it's something that people talk about a lot, is like like male toxicity and shit like that. And in a way, Marty and Ted, I hate to use like current phrases and like hip kind of ways of defining things, but I think that you have in this movie, you have an example of like two people trapped in kind of a toxic masculinity in a way, and they kind of talk their way out of it with the help of another person. And the way they get through that is by dropping the bravado and dropping winning and embracing losing, which is what we all have to do and what we all do eventually. We die, we lose, and I think just to keep that in mind all the time, and without teaching a lesson, without trying to impart a philosophical lesson to anyone, and make it as fun and funny and as tear jerking as possible.
Yeah, and Logan, I do love that he is this intelligent, educated man who throws peanuts for a living because he's still holding on to this dream of like, I want to be a writer, and then like goes on this journey that is worthy of writing about. And I think that's such an interesting look at creativity, especially with storytellers. When you're approaching a character that does have that creative part of him, how does that like manifest in your performance, knowing that he is a creative? It's just like a different kind of creativity.
Good question. Specifically, David was really he knew what he wanted out of Teddy. I don't know if he knew what he necessarily would sound like eventually, but David definitely planted like day one a writer named Walter Kirk in
Mm.
mind. Now, I think David liked his cadence mostly, the way he spoke. Not necessarily saw a connection as similar writers, uh, but certainly there is though there's just a dynamic in Walter Kirk that I tried to bring for the role of David that kind of existed in him, whether he liked it or not. He was a writer, and I started there, I guess, and yeah, I guess that would be the specific answer. Is the writer in him, I certainly drew from Walter Kirk, vocally, and intellectually.
Yeah. And Stephanie, you and I've talked about a range of different things that you've done. And I really love how you kind of have no rhyme or reason. You just bring these characters to life and they're all beautiful in their own ways. But what I loved about this role was like there's a moment where Teddy and her are running around town trying to find this woman. And she is just so happy when these people recognize him as like the peanut guy. And it is one of the few times that she is just genuinely very, very happy. And I think it's such a pretty moment when you are playing someone who's been through so much, but we don't really know what's been going on until the end. Is it those little moments that help you really find who she is? Because it's like that was her joy that they were like, yeah, that's that peanut guy from the Yankees.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I think it's a myriad of things that help me lock into who the character is. I think specifically for that moment, it is probably one of the times where she really like starts to move into having feelings that maybe are unexpected for Teddy because she watches his reaction when all these people take the piss out of him, and it's a bit embarrassing for him, but it's also like he's not denying it. He's not like running off, like he's not horrified, mortified. We have to leave this, he takes it on and he's like, all right, there's this very like, he accepts the moment as it's happening. And she is thrilled at that. And also the fact that he takes himself quite seriously, she feels. And there's it's very silly. It's also silly for her in that moment. It's just so silly. He takes himself so seriously and it's just so silly. You're the peanut guy. I want to go back to your last question though, because you asked about Logan accessing creativity that wasn't necessarily his own creativity, like the character's creativity. And you said something earlier about like how part of why he does this with his father is because he's kind of in the back of his mind, he wants to write about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved that. I think that
Yeah, that's not something David would, I don't believe that's necessarily David's intentions with the character or was written, it's not something I drew from the book, but it just, I just, you start off with a guy who has no chance, or at least he doesn't think so. And, so I'm not trying to say that there was a moment where you see his opportunistic, objectives here, but I just thought it was a very interesting dynamic that subconsciously he's trying to find his book, and, why does he go? That was a big question we asked. Why does he go to spend this time? And I think that, it's there organically, of course, father, son, you just can't stop it, but, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for talking with me. David, earlier you said it's not really a baseball movie, but that's also how I feel with like Field of Dreams. I'm like, that's not about baseball. It's about the connection between father and son. And that's very much what I loved about this. And so thank you guys so much for talking with me. I can't wait to make my brother watch it and watch him cry. Make me
Thank
so
you.
but thank you guys.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.